since I have gotten this car, I have had a bunch-ish rear end issues out of this car. And the reason I say ish is because when this car was bone stock in factory, and I first bought it, I looked under here and I could tell that it had been in a rear end collision at one point in time. There's some metal that was bent that you could tell somebody beat out. Welded in some new little brackets and things of that nature that I knew just weren't original from the factory. Whatever, drift car, sent it.
You guys silly? I'm still gonna send it.
I used to run really skinny tires on the factory 17s with high tire pressure, just go out and have some fun. Never had any issues. Replaced the lower control arms with some Maximum Motorsports ones at one point in time. Welded the diff and sent it on its way. Since then, the car's been supercharged. I've started to run a little bit stickier tires, somewhere around the 265 range. Right now I currently have some Kendas on there. Really enjoy the Kendas, but since I started running more grip and started running a little more power, I'm roughly 380 at the wheels right now. The initial pulley I put on here, the car was at about 420, but high mileage engine, I wanted to keep it safe, so I brought the boost numbers down. But these tires, being a little grippier, lower air pressures, the little extra power, started getting a lot of wheel hop issues. Rewind back to my first ever really grassroots competition. I competed against Nick Novak in the rain. And of course I was slaughtered. He's an excellent driver. But on that day, my rear end decided that the welds on the spider gears wanted to come apart. Shot some fragments through the diff cover, drained my fluid out, and we tried to fix it at the track with just a little bit more fluid and some quick steel over the hole in the diff cover. Sent it for the rest of the day. It was a wet, rainy day, so no big deal. After that, the rear end came apart. Added a set of 373 gears in the rear end. Before that, it was the factory 327s. Added some 373s back there. Re-welded everything, cleaned everything up. Thought everything was good. Still had some wheel hop issues. Got to looking, realized that my rear end, my axle tubes were actually bent. And I was leaking from one of them a little bit. Took the thing back out, took it all the way up to Hudlow Axle up in Tennessee. They put it on a jig, straightened it, and I had them re-weld these axle tubes. I'll take you over here so you can see. They re-welded these axle tubes right in here, and I had them add this bracing right here. Everything was fine for a while, but I guess these axle tubes, after they had been bent back and forth so much, became weak, and they have since re-bent. This side has even started to pull this heim all the way out. So that's not doing its job anymore. I have followed all of the Mustang God's advice on drifting these cars. I'm running a set of lower Scotty D lower control arms with some heim joints on each side. Still have the factory upper control arms with rubber bushings on each end. I've replaced these several times with brand new bushings each time. I got them from Maximum Motorsports. I'm running the Feel 441 coilovers in the rear, the true coilover setup. My Maximum Motorsports Panhard bar. I've checked pinion angle, raised my ride height to correct that a little bit, and done pretty much everything I could think of. Played around with some settings on the coilovers, and still to this day I have insane amounts of wheel hop, especially when drifting to this driver's side. You can see some of my camber wear right here on these Kendas, how it's just not even all the way across. It may be a little hard to tell on the GoPro, but if you look a little closely, it appears that I have negative camber on my rear end. I also have a lot of excess inner tire wear that indicates this. And on a straight axle, I don't think I'm necessarily supposed to have that much negative camber, if any at all. So something has bent again. My rear end is also doing things like this, but only on the driver's side. The seat clips or shims or something in here is allowing this axle to have about a 1/4 inch of play with everything bolted together. Passenger side doesn't do it at all. I've heard mixed reviews. Some say it's common for 8.8. Other people are saying this is excessive. So either way, it won't matter here in a little bit. So hopefully what's in that box over there will cure all of my issues, and I'll go over that in a minute. Eventually, future plans, I might try to run a torque arm setup and eliminate these uppers and see how that does, but for now we'll just see what this new Moser rear end does for me. There she is, brand new Moser M88 rear end. Spoke to Doug Vanderbrink, the OG of New Edge drift cars, and he highly recommended Moser when he had his FD car. And so I called Moser up over there and told him what I was doing, told him what I needed, and they helped me set this rear end up. So this is their Moser M88 rear end. The housing portion of it is a little bit thicker and sturdier than the factory one. This webbing is a little thicker, but it still has all of the factory locations for holes, tabs, bushings, everything, the ears, all that. The axle tubes are thicker than the factory ones, so shouldn't have any issues out of these things bending whatsoever. The guy on the phone told me these things will easily handle about 1,500 horsepower or more without any sort of issues. Not that I'll ever see those numbers, but hopefully I won't break anything. I added the optional lower control arm mounts, the adjustable ones, so I can play with more pinion angle settings if needed. These rear ends use bolt-in style axles. This is not a C-clip eliminator setup like you see on a lot of the 8.8 rear ends that people use. Those, from what I've been told, are not good for drifting or side loads and are prone to breaking. These are true bolt-in axles. I went with 35 spline axles from Moser. I have a spool that's in here, all new bearing seals, everything. So just a side note here, I spoke with a lot of people about this rear end after I ordered it, and one of the concerns that was voiced to me is that this style axle housing end for the Ford 9-inch does not use tapered bearings. A lot of people voiced their concern about how that would not hold up to the lateral loads. So I immediately called Moser again to try to get some answers. And the answer I was given is that although they are not ideal for the type of driving I will be doing with this, as long as I monitor them closely, make sure that they are pressed on properly, and my bearing retainers are kept tight, and I check on my seals like I should, then there shouldn't really be too many issues. They said they have very few complaints about this style rear end in a number of street cars built from Factory 5 and other places. So although it's not a full floater and it's not a tapered bearing, it does have the provision on the outside for a inner seal as well as the O-ring seal on the bearing itself. And I'm just going to kind of view the seals and the bearings as kind of a wear item that I'm just going to have to periodically check and monitor. But after several events, I have yet to have any sort of play issues or anything develop from running the style rear end. And I've been very hard on the car since then, and all the wheel hop issues are also gone. One other cool thing I'd like to add is that the factory hole size for the disc brake bracket, running the dual caliper bracket, was too large to act as a bearing retainer. So I was able to call up Scotty D Motorsports and have them actually build me a custom sized dual caliper bracket that acts as a bearing retainer in itself. And it's worked great. It's been awesome. Their customer service was great. And so far, no issues with the car. And one of the cool features of this is I was actually able to order it in whatever width I wanted. Currently on my car with the wide body setup with these Cosmos 18 by 10.5 wheels, I am running a giant spacer. If you can see that in there. That is a 2-inch spacer, I think. It's been so long since I ordered it. 2-inch, 2.25, 2.5, whatever, too damn big. So I was able to order this rear end 4 inches wider than the factory rear end, so I will no longer be running any sort of spacers. One way to do it. Okay, the rear end is out. Wasn't too bad. The hardest part about this entire thing was the drive shaft bolts where it mounts to the flange. I replaced those last time I did the rear end, and it comes with that orange thread locker on it, and that stuff is really in there. So I had to use some heat and finally got them to break loose, but I ruined, look at this, one of my wrenches in the process. That's how much force it had to break those things loose. It bent the wrench. Oh well, but the rear end's out. It's on the ground over here, so you can see as a comparison. Here's the one that I just took out. Here's the new one going in. I'm going to clean up this diff cover and swap it onto that one. And I'm going to hang on to this rear end for a little while for a mock-up on a future project. But you can look, you can see how bent this thing is. All right, stay tuned. I'm going to get this thing in and hopefully it come Import Alliance here in about 3 weeks. The car will be better than it ever has before. We'll see.